Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound, just watch no bandit run. Keep your foot hard on the pedal.
Hello, welcome. This is the Stunt Pod, the podcast that turns the spotlight on the people who make the action happen.
Yes.
My name's Blake, I'm your host, and here's John.
Hello.
He's the other host.
Yeah, I'm the other one.
The other one.
I'm the other one.
One that knows what he's talking about.
Well, we'll find out, I think.
How are you, all right?
Yeah, I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, not bad.
Good stuff.
Not bad.
Good stuff.
Thank you for listening. This is a little special one we're going to do today because we've had busy lives over the last week or so, and we wanted to put something together to pay homage, tribute to Burt Reynolds. And we thought the best way to do it is get everything together ready first, and then do this, and then get it out.
Yeah.
We didn't want to rush to get it out. We just wanted to get it out and get it out right.
Yeah, it just seemed right. It seemed the right time, poignant time, if we were going to do something. And, of course, he is a big influence, not only in cinema goers, but also to many people in the stunt business. How many people have you spoken to who said, I saw Hooper and I thought, I want to be a stuntman?
Well, the thing is, he was a stuntman before he was an actor, wasn't he?
That's right, absolutely. He was a stuntman. He was a stuntman in the mid to late 50s, and got himself in situations where, again, back in those days, quite by accident, you would find yourself being able to do a bit of extra rough and tumble. Because at school, he was a pro ball player, and really was going to be the career. He was Florida State, which was the
Gators, isn't it?
Yeah, Florida State University was where he went to, and that's what he was going to do. He was going to be a football player, and there was no fear of anything changing at all. And then somebody from the drama department, a teacher from the drama department, said, "We've got a production coming up, and you look like the sort of person that would be good in this particular role." He went, "What, me? Really? Yeah, you. We think you'd be very good." So he went along and did it and absolutely adored it. Never thinking in a moment that he could make that transition from playing professional football, which is all he's ever wanted to do, probably since he could walk. And he had a really rough upbringing. You know, his father wasn't the pair of them didn't get on terribly well. He adored his mother. And they didn't see much of each other, so it was a tricky childhood. But to then be given the option to do something else, and when he tried it, he adored it. And let's be honest, back in that you see some of those stills, and he's a good-looking guy. There's no doubt about it. And so the likelihood of anybody going, you'd be good for this around that sort of time.
Yeah.
You didn't, yourself. You look at some of the TV shows from those late 50s, early 60s, or movies from that period and go, why is that guy in this movie? Oh, because he looks good.
Yeah.
He can't act, but he looks good. Well, Burt had a bit of both.
Yeah.
Well,
he's I mean, just reading his bio and everything. Born in 1936, and his father claimed Cherokee roots.
Yeah,
which explains a bit, doesn't it?
That's right. There was that look that he'd got. A lot of his early pictures. What would be a good example? There's a movie called Shark. If you check Shark out, I think it's about 1966, and he has a look about him. It's set in Beirut, and he has that sort of, I want to say swarthy. It's a swarthy look, I think is the phrase I'm looking for. Yeah. And because of that look, he was cast in a lot of pictures. He played an Indian in an early picture. In fact, his first movie, I think he played an Indian. So he had that type of look about him.
What was his first film? Flight?
No, it was
Pony Express or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But I mean, just an extraordinary look about him that meant, from a casting point of view, he really was, adaptable to all sorts. And I mean, those early periods is when he was getting lots of knockabout roles as an extra, as an Indian, as falling out of a horse, falling over, falling down this, falling through that.
Because my earliest recollection of him was Mean Machine.
Yeah.
That's when I first came across Main Machine Smoking the Bandit.
When did you see it, though? Did you see it? I mean, you wouldn't have seen it.
Late 70s.
I was going to say, you'd have seen it late 70s, yeah.
Yeah.
You saw
I mean, sort of, it's an American football thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a bit different, isn't it?
You see it on TV?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Smoking the Bandit 2 for me. It was the first one I saw in the cinema. And after that,
it's not until after then you start,
you go,
especially
that, I enjoyed
then
that.
going into my film career, sort of like in the late 90s, and then you start watching things like Hooper and all those kind of things come across, and the Fall Guy, and because he was in the Fall Guy as well, wasn't he?
He was in all sorts. He was in all sorts. He had lots of cameos and bits and pieces and loads of TV, but really, those movies, Smoking the Bandit 2, I'd seen Smoking the Bandit on TV.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure of that. Now, whether that was I know that Smoking the Bandit 2 was 1980 and the original was 77. So whether it was on TV before then, I'm not sure. But I remember seeing the second one at the pictures, definitely. And not the greatest movie in the world, but I came out and my sides hurt because I was laughing. It was such a funny movie.
And it's one of the first films where they put all the outtakes at the end, isn't it?
I love it. See, that's terrific, though. I used to love that. The idea that these, when you're doing a take, 9 times out of 10, your first take's always the best one, right? So, can we just do this one? Or can we just change this for this? And because there's lots of, it's not the fact that it's complicated dialogue, but in certain cases, you just can't remember the word. There's a word that you're going to struggle with, or somebody looks at you. Dom DeLuise was in that movie. You only have to look at Dom DeLuise, and you see his shoulder shaking, and you've gone. You just need to say anything.
That's that
he
famous thing with the ambulance, isn't
with
it?
the ambulance.
They just simply could not get the
just
lines
kept slapping him the whole time in Cannonball Run. Why are you laughing? He laughed first. All that sort of stuff. Just
it's
because
like Peter Sellers in a lift, isn't it?
Yes, that lovely moment. But you just, they were funny movies. And you knew that when you were going to watch a Burt movie, firstly, it was going to be hilarious. 9 times out of 10, even if he didn't mean to. He kept breaking the fourth wall as well by looking directly into camera a lot of times when he was saying a line. So you knew that you were in on the gag. But it was great stuff.
He never seemed to me like he was in those films. He was acting. He was just being himself,
exactly,
having a laugh.
Yeah. Some of those early movies, they are proper acting jobs. Deliverance.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it went from Deliverance, and what was it, 100 Rifles and stuff like that, where he was playing a part. Then he went into Smoking the Bandit, where it was like him being him.
Yeah.
And then in his later career, he started doing serious acting again.
That's right,
didn't he?
He went almost full circle, didn't he? I think a lot of those early pictures, Deliverance and Seamus, they're 2 good examples of him acting and really acting. I mean, Deliverance, the John Boorman picture, plenty of kudos, and is still today considered one of the great movies. If you've never seen Deliverance, it's Ned Beatty's in it and John Voight's in it. It's Ronnie
famous
Cox
for the
is in
piggy
it.
scene.
Famous. Well, he was also saying that he went back because that was filmed in part of Georgia, and they took him back. And he was part of a sort of tour. And the guy was saying, this is where Burt Reynolds filmed Deliver. He said, you realise I'm here? He said, oh, yeah, well, you know all about this, don't you? Yeah, okay. They moved on to somewhere else. And he said, the waterfall where Ned Beatty goes through that appalling situation is now called, and I quote, Sodomy Falls. You couldn't make this up. This is what it's called.
It's the first time you ever heard that banjo tune, isn't it?
Exactly. And whenever anybody has a guitar or a banjo, that's the first thing they play. That's how iconic it is from that sort of thing. But there's an action sequence in that, a number of action sequences, but the kayaking sequence down the waterfall. Yeah. For many years, everybody assumed that there were stunt doubles. They were all doubled. Burt makes it very clear that they weren't doubled. He was never doubled, which he wasn't. John Voight was never doubled either, who was in one of the other boats. And Ronnie Cox wasn't doubled either. Ned Beatty might have been, but those 3 particularly, and he's very adamant about that he wasn't doubled at all. There is a suggestion that there are a number of doubles on the picture, and I've just got nothing to back that up. At this stage. So if anybody does know if they were doubled, you can let us know by all means. But as far as Burt was concerned, he did all his own stuff, and so did Ronnie Cox, and so did John Voight. So I can't argue with the man there. But that particular sequence, that's a big waterfall as well. It's not like it's almost like a weir. You know, it goes down a couple of levels, and then he bounces out and flips over into the water, and the whole thing falls over. And it's quite angry water. It's not like it's been,
angry
water. This water is. It's not like it's like
a Niagara Falls. It's furious.
Well, no, it's furious. It's not a mill pond by any state of the imagination, you know, and it's not, calm, clear water. This is proper water.
And it's angry.
Yeah, you'd be pretty angry as well if you had to put... Well, you know the way they do that thing where they sometimes dam places. They put... just to bring up the water level. Well, that clearly wasn't the case here. No. This was really fast-flowing, angry water. And consequently had an extraordinary sequence. So those type of things, they tend to stick with you. And the other thing... The movie not that long after that from the 70s was this picture called Seamus, where he plays a policeman, and this really was the first time that I'd seen him really throw himself about. And you'd heard the stories of Burt as a stuntman through Hal Needham because they knew each other. And in fact, they lived together for a long time.
I was ask you about that, man, because they knew he was very good friends of Hal.
Yeah, absolutely. They knew each other. They lived together for many, many years. One of the there was those two great bachelor pads. There was David Niven's and Errol Flynn's, which was called Psoriasis by the Sea, and for obvious reasons. And then there was Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham. They lived together for many years. And well, you if you were a fly on the wall there, I tell you, oh my goodness,
squash could be throwing things around.
Good grief! So two major characters, but this particular movie, Seamus was Glenn Wilder was the stunt coordinator on this, and again, there are. I think that Charlie Pacerni was one of the doubles for Burt. I think that probably he was doubling him after his accident because he had a serious accident on that picture, which it's extraordinary. But when you think that there's a sequence and he has to jump from a wall onto a tree branch.
Oh, is it from like a bridge kind of thing?
It's like a wall, like a bridge, and then jumping into a park. Well, he's gonna jump sort of 6, 8, maybe 10 feet out onto this branch. This branch is never going to hold him. I mean, it isn't going to hold him, not at that speed. And he grabs hold of it, and the thing snaps, and he comes down to the floors, 25 feet maybe. It's a good fall, and he lands on his head.
And then doubles himself folds himself over, doesn't he?
And everything is. You hear this. Grunt.
Even the birds went quiet.
You hear this grunt, and you think, "Oh my God!" And everything's quiet. And there isn't often in situations like that where on set there's been some sort. You think. This shouldn't have happened. There's a very fast edit. There's a fast cut because then they move to a different angle or they move to the stuntman moving away or the double moving away. But in this instance, nobody says cut. There's a very long period of time where the camera slowly backs away and presumably...
This is still in the film?
This is in the film. And eventually somebody will go, cut, and then they'll go in and see how he is. And obviously somebody will go check the gate.
Basically,
first.
What's happening in that period of time is they're all looking at each other. Is that supposed to happen?
Well, exactly. And he's the star of the movie.
Yeah.
Now you have to again. This brings on certain questions, but you have to query. He knows Glenn Wilder very well. The connection between the three of them. Hal would bring lots of stunt guys to his place. Hal used to have a place out in the country, and there was used to have a grounds and a great big tree and had a lot of the smaller external leaves and branches taken away. So it had these big substantial branches left. And they would do high falls from these branches into boxes or bags or new types of bags. So they all knew each other, all on the circuit. And consequently, Glenn, as the stunt coordinator, and the director may have said, we need Burt to do this. I mean, nowadays, you have to look at it from nowadays as well. Nowadays, he could do that. The actor could do that. He'd be wired. There'd be a harness. There'd be a big stunt rigging guys all over the place.
There'd be first aid.
There'd be first aid. The floor that he's falling into. This would probably be done in the studio. Maybe because the floor would be replaced with padding, or it would be something of that nature. That tree wouldn't be a real tree.
They'll dig a pit.
Or they'll dig a pit. So there's lots of precautions. But you realise that on this one, they've probably said, right, Burt, we need you to get on that wall and jump to that tree and then come down the tree and then run out of shot. And Burt's gone, sure, not a problem. Only then to go and do it and realise that was some fall. And he was in a real state. So consequently,
You know
I think...
what the injuries afterwards?
Well, he concertinaed part of the vertebrae in his back. And I think he broke a couple of ribs. And this was relatively early on in the shoot. It wasn't like it was 3 months down the line. There was still a number of other bits to do. So there is a fight scene later on in the movie, and he's being thrown about an office, and there's a scuffle between. I think he goes to investigate an office and is found in the office by two guys, and there's a fist fight, and it's pretty brutal. You know, there's lots of falling about, there's lots of bouncing off furniture and stuff, and that happened after this original incident. So yeah, he's taken. And I think that was why that Charlie Piccioni was brought in, probably for some of the stuff later on, to say, look, give the guy a break. Would you do this? Because he doesn't need to do it. Now, after the accident, they decide you don't need to do it. We'd have probably been trying to talk him out of it for the whole thing. But how do you talk Burt Reynolds out of not doing something in those days? You know, I mean, and later on in life, he said that the reason that his health declined relatively quickly was because of all that punishment it took in those early days. You know, if it wasn't football, although he was padded for a lot of those football things, it was stunt jobs. And as we'd mentioned, with reference to padding, what padding was there? You know, you have to ask. It's quite a tight fitting suit. He might have had a pad or a couple of pads on, but man, I'd want to be in some sort of bubble, I think, that would prevent any injury at all. But it was some fall when you look at it on screen. The other great movie, which I thought was terrific, was White Lightning. Mm-hmm. White Lightning, which for those of they tie up. There's White Lightning, where he plays the character Gator McCluskey,
right,
and then of course the movie Gator, which is the sequel to that. And there is
lots of car chase films, isn't
lots
it?
of car chase.
Lots of car chase films he did.
You know.
Well, then again, that's him and Hal Needham sitting around with a bottle of bourbon, and again, I wonder if we can do this.
How about? And that's often how a lot of these would happen.
Yep.
Because they'd, in certain cases, I know with a lot of these, you know yourself, the people that will write in action sequences based on the location that they're in. Mm. Oh, we're here. What can we utilise here? And of course, that's more or less what happened with this particular sequence, that car chase sequence at the start, and is, you know, again Burt doing a lot of the driving. But he
liked driving. I mean, in his later career, he and Hal Needham owned a NASCAR team.
Yes, they did. That's right.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't they? So, well, that was named.
He did a movie in the 80s called Stroker Ace.
That's it.
About NASCAR, and I think on the strength of that, I thought, I can go with this.
Mach 1 Racing, and it's called Skull Bandit.
Skull Bandit,
after the Bandit cars.
Skull Bandit. Well, that was Skull Bandits were those things it was tobacco, wasn't it? Used to pop inside your cheek.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
No, never used it.
No, neither have I. But I remember an ad. I think they were banned after a while. Yeah, that sequence. He does
and he owned a USFL, United States Football League team, didn't he? Tampa Bay Bandits, named after Smoking a Bandit.
Did he see?
He was co-owner. 1982 to 1986. That was.
You're reading that, aren't you? But you are the Oracle.
No. No, I've loved motorsports, and I'm quite.
I didn't know about the football.
I'm interested in American football. Yeah. But yeah, the USFL that's something that Donald Trump tried to start, didn't it? It failed miserably. Oh. So yeah, it's when the NFL was going on strike and everything.
Such is life.
Yeah.
But that opening sequence and that car chase particularly.
Yeah.
Again, lots of driving that Burt did. Obviously, he was doubled for the jump, and there's a car jump from one side from a bank onto a barge which is pulling away. It's a sand barge which is pulling away from the side of the, pulling away from the side there. And Hal Needham did the job on this, and was doing probably 50 plus miles an hour in order to make the gap, and didn't really make the gap. made some of it, not all of it. I think
Yeah.
whether the plan was to get all 4 wheels on the barge, but he kind of straddled it and got sort of 50% of the car, maybe 60% of the car, the front end on, and the rest was dangling about in the water, consequently causing a broken back. And I think there was, again, an initial cut there because then Burt jumps out and gets around the front of the car. But Hal was supposed to do the whole thing. So land, get out, and hide behind the bonnet because he's being shot at. And they realised there was a problem. He just couldn't get out of the car. So broken back, and Burt goes with Hal in the ambulance to the hospital. And they say, look, you've broken your back here. And there's a great deal of fluid in your lungs, and we need to drain this. And so that's what they did. This rather pretty nurse was hanging onto his legs, and this guy with a huge needle says, "All right, I can't give you any pain relief at this stage. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to put this." He said, "Okay, get on with it." And so he plunged this needle in, and they started drawing the fluid.
Standing against the wall.
He was standing against a wall. Yeah, the only way they could do it apparently was standing against the wall. So that's why this nurse was holding his leg,
facing the wall.
Facing the wall. Yeah, facing the wall. And of course, the pain caused everything just to kick into overdrive, and he relieved himself all over this pretty girl who was holding his ankles. And so they drained the fluid, and he looks down at this soaking wet woman who's down there, and he looks at her and he says, I suppose asking you for your numbers out of the question. But that was the sort of bloke he was, and that's exactly him and Burt together, the two of them, they go, well, yeah, okay. But just appalling situations. But they were very close. They knew each other of old. I said they lived together for many, many years. And you can imagine that all sorts of extraordinary stories would have taken place time and time again.
Because Smoking About It is one of the biggest films of the '70s, late '70s.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
And Hal Needham directed it.
He directed it and he wrote it. They were making on the set of Gator. What had happened? True story, folks. On the set of Gator, they were staying in it was a little motel, which they'd taken probably 15 or 20 rooms, and every evening at the end of production, they were provided with a pack of Coors beer, right?
Yeah.
So a 6-pack, which they then took to their room, and every following morning, somebody would go, "My beer's missing. Why is my beer missing?" And it turned out that it was the chambermaids or the girls that would go around and do the cleaning in the apartments were taking the beer because they couldn't get beer that side of the state line. And that struck something with Hal, who thought, "Oh, that's interesting. Why?" So he looked into it. Of course, it was an offence. It was called bootlegging. Yeah. You couldn't get beer that side of the state line for a reason. And consequently, this idea went round in his head, and he wrote a base story on the idea of doing this en masse, this huge quantity of beer, and getting a character to run this beer from one side of the country to the other. And partway along the way, he pitched the idea to Burt, who was quite happy about the whole thing, said it needed tweaking here and there, but it's quite a nice part. And originally, he pitched the idea with him playing Snowman, which is the role that Jerry Reed got. But he said, "No, I quite fancy this one here." Okay. So they tweaked it slightly and got the role right, and then went to a studio, and they went, "Okay, well, who have you got?" "Well, Burt Reynolds says he'll play." "What?" "Oh, all of a sudden, that's a change in the situation. Here, have some money." And went and made it for not a lot of money back then, but it made a fortune. It was such a huge movie. And has many wonderful moments in it, of course.
Budget was $4.3 million.
It cost that much to make the trailer these days, doesn't it?
Box office, $300 million.
Have that. Well, that was it. They really knew. There was a couple of great inspired piece of casting. Sally Field is
Imagine the
brilliant.
producer taking your 5% of that.
Sally Field is wonderful in that film. And Jackie Gleason, as well as Smokey in this instance, is absolutely brilliant. You take those two characters out, and that's a tough movie to make if you don't have those.
Yeah. Jackie Gleason's Smokey.
Jackie Gleason, was the Texas County Mountie.
Yeah.
Buford T. Justice. But a wonderful idea. And of course, not only that, but the studio, very cleverly, said to Hal, they struck a deal with him that you can have this movie and then you can make two. The deal he had was to make 3 pictures. So he made that one, and then he made Hooper on the back of that, and then he made a thing later called Megaforce in the mid-'80s under the same contract, I believe. But it's one of those great pictures. It's one of those movies I also remember watching with my dad, with my mum and dad, and the two of them not being able to speak because they were howling with laughter. You could quote line after line after line from the picture. And again, Burt did a great deal of his own driving in that picture. Alan Gibbs did most of his driving for him. And Karen Brady was in there for Sally Field. But absolutely wonderful. Janet Brady, sorry, not Karen. Karen Brady, isn't she the chairman of Birmingham City Football Club? I'm sure I might have got that from somewhere.
Yes, it's something.
Yes, I meant
just
Janet Brady.
reading it, because in Burt Reynolds' autobiography, then he'd have written the first script on legal pads.
Yes.
and said it's the worst script he'd ever read, but it would still make it work, and most of the dialogue was improvised on set.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's what you could do with Burt. You could put him in front of a camera, and he knows the lines, but he's got an idea about working the lines and making it slightly better. And so, let me try this one, let me try that one. And that's what you get. That's pretty much all the stuff that Jackie Gleason did was chance to...
3.3 million, right, to make the film. $1 million of that was Reynolds' salary. So it cost 2.3 million to make.
And it's all there. It's all there on screen. It's absolutely wonderful. And a lot of great action. Again, in good form, Bobby Bass and Stan Barrett. Lots of people that Hal will have worked at years. But Alan Gibbs, of course, they had that world record jump.
Yeah. The
Trans Am, jumping from one side to the other, which was a world record and stood for many years. Many, many years. Alan Gibbs giving it the beans and throwing this Trans Am from one side to the other. It was absolutely wonderful. If we just go back to Mean Machine.
Yeah.
Because there's we always talk about stunts and Oscars and awards, right? Well, there's an interesting piece which we're going to listen to now. Burt was always on the Johnny Carson show, on the Tonight Show, and would guest host the thing from time to time. I think he did it about 10 or 15 times altogether in the many years that he was on. And they have an interview where Mean Machine has just come out. It was called Longest Yard everywhere else, but in America it was called Mean Machine. And it's very interesting, the conversation that Johnny...
I thought it was Semi-Tough.
No, that's a different movie.
Oh, was it? Oh.
Yeah, that's a separate movie. That's another... Oh, that's a football. That's another one. Yeah, that's football. So when this...
Semi-Tough.
Semi. I'm semi-tough. Okay. Are you really? Well,
that's the other podcast.
Move on. So when this picture came out, he went on to Johnny Carson's show. Johnny loved it. He'd been to see it the night before, absolutely adored it, and was telling Burt about it. And then they struck up a conversation based around stunts and based around Academy Awards and stuff like that. And it goes like this.
You have done a lot of your stunts, practically all of your stunts on all of your pictures. You have a stuntman's card, I understand.
Yeah.
From the, because those guys really, I've had a lot of them on the show, and we've done some various things. They really earn their money, and they're skilled, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They take all the chances, but when I say take chances, they really plan those things so well, but there's always the possibility of something at the last minute going wrong, and they do great work.
They're professional athletes, really. Is what
Absolutely. It's a legitimate idea, though. They don't really recognize the stunt people at award times.
They should. They really should.
It would be also a very interesting spot.
It'd be a great spot. You imagine picking the greatest stunt of the year.
And to show the film of the, say, 5 nominees for the greatest stunt and then make an award. That would
be terrific.
A little pizzazz.
So there we go. That's the two of them discussing in 1974 about wouldn't it be great to
I
have.
wonder if Jack Gill had seen that. And went,
Took him 27 years.
It's still doing it.
He's still doing it now. That's them talking about it back then. So just I think it's terrific. Whatever you see, I can't really. If you've never seen a Burt Reynolds movie, I don't know how to explain it, but you should really just Google the guy, go to IMDb.
Or Wikipedia. It's all on there.
Pick a movie and go, all right, I'm going to give this a go. It's just terrific. He does exactly what he says on the tin as far as movies is concerned. And particularly with a lot of those ones we've been talking about, these later ones anyway, Smoking the Bandit, White Lightning, Gator. Gator's another great example of lots of action, lots of fights. Hal Needham again. And the two of them, he's a great double. Hal Needham really was a terrific double. Yeah. He doubles him in one sequence. There's the big fight thing at the end with Jerry Reed driving this truck, like a pickup truck, and it goes to the side of the road and it just starts to turn over. And Burt's hanging on the side of it, and they cut to Hal as this thing turns over. So the car is turning over with Hal on the outside of it, and he jumps clear. And you'd be hard pushed to find somebody as good a double there. Jerry Reed was doubled by Tommy Huff in that picture. And again, for a lot of that fight sequence, they're crashing through these wooden structures, and it's really very, very good. They're terrific.
If anything, this podcast is turning into films you must go and watch.
Yes, quite right. You should. You should go and watch them. And I think logically, the one movie, if you haven't seen it, I mean, you ask, if you speak to stunt people and you say, is there a movie that you saw that you thought, oh, that was terrific? They all say Hooper. Hooper is a big, big picture. It's about a stuntman. It's about a stuntman who maybe, is of a certain age, and physically may not be in such great shape anymore. And on the strength of that, there's a lot of other things going on. His relationship, his family, his life generally, and his addiction to pain relief in this instance. So all of this is brought together, and then all the jam put together with this extraordinary action sequences left, right, and centre. Again, here is Burt in conversation with Johnny Carson talking about Hooper. So let's have a listen to this.
Yeah, it's about a stuntman who's gotten to an age where he should retire, and there's a young stuntman coming along that's pushing him.
Right.
So he pushes him into doing the greatest stunt in the world.
What is that?
Jumping 400 and some feet in a car across the cavern, which was a silly stunt to do, and they got a lot of money for it. Those guys are not here now. They're in a home.
For the terminally weird.
Yes. For short people.
What did they jump? What was the biggest stunt they did in this?
One guy did a jump out of a helicopter, 230-some feet, which was the world record. And another guy...
Into water?
Yeah, A.J. Prakunis did that. And then Buddy Joe Hooker came off a 25-story building, rappelled down the glass building with a rope. And then they did the jump across the cavern, which was incredible.
There we go. So a good explanation of what was going on. And again, one of those movies that Hal got on the back of Smoking the Bandit. This idea that, well, let's write about something I know. And he also got to use lots of his own people, Yeah. There's Joffrey Brown is in there when he's in the helicopter. And, of course, another world record-breaking high fall at the time with the late A.J. Backinas, who jumps from the helicopter, 274 feet.
That's what that was on.
Yes, that was some... Again, when you look at it in the confines of the picture, you think, why is he he's just got into the helicopter. Now why is he jumping out into an airbag? It didn't make any sense from the shot. Yeah. But then, obviously, they'd be cutting the movie into something else, the actual movie that's being filmed for the picture. That was some fall. And that was that thing between AJ and Dar Robinson. They had this thing, well, he jumped how high? Well, I can jump slightly higher.
Of course, with how it was all cars, wasn't it? is all lots and lots of car stuff.
Yep.
Because he did Smoking a Bandit 2 in 1980, and then Cannonball Run in 1981.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Again, another Hal Needham.
Yeah, yeah. Cannonball Run again was that terrific mixture of getting your mates together and making a movie.
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore
Dean Martin.
Roger Moore played a Jewish guy called Seymour Goldfarb, or Seymour Goldfarb Jr., and was pretending to be Roger Moore, the actor.
Yeah.
Now, he was in contract with Bond at the time. The following year, he would do For Your Eyes Only. He had 2 more movies to do after that. So he was in an Aston Martin. He was in a tuxedo.
Yeah.
Admittedly, he was in a black tuxedo at the end of the picture. He had the girl with him, and he was in a fight. He says that lovely line to the guy.
Step back, my dear. I must warn you. I'm Roger Moore. Who? Roger Moore.
So there's all these lovely things going on. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. and Jackie Chan's first big picture.
Really?
Jackie Chan's in the movie. That's his first real big movie in an American audience. So again,
Of course, he drives a Subaru, doesn't he?
he drives the Subaru. Yeah, some terrific stuff
With rocket boosters.
And the night vision and all of this great stuff. So some terrific moments.
Again,
in
16 to 18 million budget, box office 72 million.
They could do no wrong. I mean, that was the thing. That you put those elements together, put Burt together with Hal Needham, throw Dom DeLuise in there, and throw Dean Martin in the mix and a few other friends, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't something that was complicated. They just knew how to make these type of movies. So you have, Cannonball Run. You've got Hooper. Another picture which I absolutely adore is a picture called Rough Cut.
Okay.
Which I recently managed to get hold of because I hadn't seen it for many, many years. And it's filmed predominantly in Britain and in Amsterdam. Andy Armstrong worked as one of the second unit directors on it. And it's about a diamond heist. But when you put Burt Reynolds into a British scenario.
It was based on a novel, wasn't it?
Yeah. Leslie Ann Down, David Niven.
Yeah.
A good cast. Timothy West is in there. Prunella Scales' husband. You put all of these different actors into it. Nice locations. Directed by Don Siegel, who directed Dirty Harry for Clint Eastwood. So lots of great, nice little action sequences. Hal, of course, is on stunt coordinator duty or second unit director duty. One or the other, I think he's doing. Second unit director. And pops up in a little role, but it's a great film, and again, lots of those touches that those two working together closely together, and you see that this is doing all right. These pair can do no wrong, when they get put together. For me, anyway, personally, I mean, that was one of my favorites because I watched it a lot. But some of those later pictures of Burt, I think really. For those type of pictures, Sharky's Machine is an absolute joy. If you're unfamiliar with Sharky's Machine, you should see that. That's really very good. And you will know Sharky's Machine because of Dar Robinson's work at the end of the picture. He's crashing through the building. There's a nice little sequence where he's done the fall and Burt goes over to see if he's okay, which we'll have a little listen to here.
Back off! You were really backwards. Great. Want another one?
So, as you can see from that little moment there, the rehearsal shot is Dar coming out from a slightly lower floor. It was 160 feet. And he comes out of this.
That's the rehearsal.
This was that was the actual shot, but the rehearsal was slightly lower, not much lower. And he comes out backwards, but then turns around midair and lands in the bag. So anyway, they want to make a few adjustments for the actual shot itself. He's wearing a face mask. The actor he's doubling, called Henry Silver, he's wearing a face mask of the actor, and he's going to be running at the window before turning round before he hits it. So momentum is going to keep him going that way. And when he lands in the bag, he's all shapes. And he's not, and certainly
because was that That was directed by Burt Reynolds.
Yes,
that
it was
his first one he's ever directed.
Yeah, could have been. Yeah, could well have been actually. Yeah.
So didn't he have a nice comment to say about that? About the fall?
He did. Yeah. No, there was also from that was from the movie Stick.
Ah. Okay.
But yeah, for the Sharky's machine one, I mean it was all sorts. But that comment was them running after it over and you were really backwards. He said, yeah, you're dead right. I was. Had no idea how he was going to land. Well, no, neither did anybody else, I think, when you look at it, because he could have been anywhere. But on the strength of that, they got on so well, Dar and Burt, that they became sort of big buddies. And it was later on that Dar had said, look, I quite fancy doing an acting role. And Burt was, well, okay, well, we'll find you something, and we'll see how we get on. Anyway, this is Stick. Is the movie that they worked on. It was an Elmore Leonard book. It wasn't the greatest movie in the world, and Burt would be the first to tell you. In fact, everybody who was in the movie would be the first to tell you. And Burt directed it. Dar plays a character called Moki, who is a hitman, an assassin in some shape or form, and does a number of gags during the picture. But the big one is the big fall at the end of the movie. And, he'd done 160 feet into an airbag before, but this was a shot where he was going to be in dialogue with Burt. Burt is on top of a balcony and Dar is hanging below it, and there's dialogue between the two of them, and then he's going to fall away from camera and there's no airbag, so they'd got this little cable and descending unit and all sorts. They put it together.
This is one of the early fan descenders, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I know whether it was a fan descender. It was a brake descender, yeah, something of that nature. So they tried to work something together and with Glenn Wilder, who was coordinating. And it's really exciting. You have a look at the clip, and you'll see the clip, which we'll put in here, and you'll be able to see it. But you see him falling away, and he's got a gun in his right hand, and he's firing, and he manages to fire all 6 shots on the way down before the cut, and then the dummy falling to the floor. But what I like is Burt's reaction afterwards. So we're going to have a listen to Burt's reaction, because he's in the shot. He's looking as he's falling away. So this is Burt's reaction.
Good boy, God. Beauty! Great.
I tell you, my heart was in my throat. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was thrilling. It was terribly thrilling. It was scary. It was thrilling, and I think every guy in the crew felt the same way I did. Everybody felt like we'd all been a part of something that was quite unique.
You got what I was looking at. It was.
Thanks, pal. Give me the opportunity. Was it a rush? It was a rush. I was busy working.
I was worried. I didn't know what position I was going to be in. I have no idea. I think I kind of cupped it and just kept this part of my body like this still.
You were working all the way down.
I fired all 6 shots.
I know.
Shocked and slightly sweating and everything,
Didn't he say something rather not rude about the film?
Well, but I think there was Dar won an award. He won a Stuntman award for that, and it might have it was Burt had certainly suggested this. It might have been Charles Durning had said it at the time, but Burt said, the only decent thing about that picture was your fall. The rest of the movie was rubbish.
And he directed
it. He was the first person to go, it wasn't the greatest movie, but that fall alone was worth the admission price, which it was. It was absolutely stunning. And sadly, Dar passed away a couple of years later, so it was a great shame. But it was a wonderful idea.
Because it's in sort of the early 80s when his career started to take a bit of a dip, didn't it?
Yeah, it was doing... I know there was a couple of odd pictures. I mean, he did, you would do stuff like, Stroker Ace we touched on earlier. That was the sort of thing you would expect but it was a comedy. Again, it was Hal Needham based. It was comedy, right? And then he does Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Yeah, you're going, why are you doing this, Burt? Well, it was Dolly Parton, and it's a musical. And you're going, right, okay. Again, why are you doing this? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
So he made some odd little choices along the way. He was very good in City Heat, though, which was him and Clint Eastwood, 1984, that was a great picture. I enjoyed that enormously. The two of them worked very well together. In fact, that takes us nicely to the fact that they were both fired on the same day when they worked on TV shows in the studios back in the 50s. And there's a lovely story that Burt tells about Clint and him getting fired on the same day. And here's him telling that particular anecdote.
No, I've known Clint for 25 years, and we were fired the very same day from Universal 25 years ago.
Fired from what and how?
From the studio. They called us both in this office, and this guy said to Clint, your Adam's apple sticks out way too far, and you've got a chipped tooth, you've got little squinty eyes, and you talk too slow. And I said, what's the matter with me? And he said, you can't act.
Yeah.
They've been telling me, and I'm still here.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we got up and we walked down the street, which was a long street at Universal, and Clint, who only says about 25 words a year anyway, didn't say anything. And I said, Clint, you're in big trouble. He said, why is that? I said, because I can learn how to act, but you're never going to get rid of that damn Adam's apple. Anyway, he went on to make Mini Mill and come back at Universal, and that guy who fired us is now spinning in a grave somewhere.
Yeah.
You see, I can learn to act, but you will still have that Adam's apple, so you'll still be ugly. But I can learn to act. You know, the idea that you got fired because that face was wrong and the Adam's apple was wrong, and you got fired because, well, you can't act. So there we go. But
because in sort of like in the mid to late 80s, I mean, he's famous for saying getting to the top turned out to be a hell of a lot more fun than staying there.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of financial issues. He had a lot of wife issues. Mm-hmm. He was marrying one and divorcing another.
Because he seemed to every time he did a film, especially in the late 80s with Smoking About It and all the other things, is that he always seemed to be married to the leading actress, didn't he?
Yeah, there was that. I don't think he made a habit of it. I think it was possibly just you know, Sally Field had said herself when after he passed away, she said, you know, he was the one. You know, if we got it right, the two of us knew that we were good for each other, and they were together for a little while. Certainly through Hooper, certainly through Smoking the Bandit, and you know, well, it's a shame, but he had some situations in his private life which he was trying to sort out, and that took a long time, and his health was failing.
Because he was aware that Tom Selleck was getting about now, wasn't he? Because that was his big rival, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And in his prime, Burt was being asked by a number of studios to do a number of ideas. Tom Selleck was up for Indiana Jones, right? Which he was up for. Burt was up for. He was offered Bond in '69 when, or '68 he was offered Bond when Connery walked away after You Only Live Twice. He was offered it, and he said, "No, I'm fine." He was offered it again for Diamonds Are Forever before they signed a guy called John Gavin, who was the actor who was then going to play Bond, and it was only the basis that the United Artists at the time said, "Well, I'm not quite sure we can take this movie with this actor," so they managed to get Connery back for a picture, but he was offered it twice, and so he said, you know, look, Bond has to be English. There's no point in me trying to do it. I can't do it. It's not an American thing. And yet years later
that podcast is coming.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, funnily enough, years later they offered it to James Brolin, but he said it was an English role, so he turned that down as well.
Because that's when he started getting into directing and producing, wasn't it? On the back of the fact that he's getting to that point in his career now where he can't do what he was doing before, and so the natural kind of avenues started opening up for him.
Yeah, there comes a time that, you've got to look at what the situation is and can you do anything about it? And he's got huge amounts of experience in all sorts of areas in film, and it made a lot of sense for him to look at. He'd been doing directing. Well, it made a lot of sense for him to look into producing and some writing, which is where ideas. Well, a lot of successful ones like BL Striker. Those particular shows were quite popular.
Because he started going back into TV after his films started flopping a bit. And that's when he was so conscious of it. So he took a break and then went into TV, didn't he?
It was such a shame as well, because there was some movies that you thought really could have been much better. Jerry London did a picture with Burt and Liza Minnelli called Rent-A-Cop in 1987, and the premise of it was a nice idea, but Burt was of a certain age.
There were some rumours about him struggling with AIDS or something, wasn't there? Because he lost lots of weight or something.
Well, yeah, I think that they all sort of there was suggestions of all sorts of folk around about that sort of time. It didn't help that one of his big mates was Rock Hudson, and suddenly around that sort of time was diagnosed with AIDS. So they kind of tied everything up together. But that wasn't the situation with Burt. But yeah, you get some of these projects. Rent-A-Cop's a good example of a movie that probably he shouldn't have been involved in. But anyway, there was movies like that made him decide, well, let's look at something else. BL Striker was popular as a TV show, and then of course ultimately Evening Shade, which was huge. Evening Shade was a very, very, very popular movie, TV. I beg your pardon. A series, and ran for quite some time. But he developed a core group of people around him. Charles Durning was always one of those actors that was there, and it just that time. Hal Holbrook was another actor who he worked with in this TV show. He'd been in a number of productions with Burt, so he kind of had this little family of people that he could go and pick and choose. And if you're looking for a good laugh, go to YouTube. There are some great outtakes of Evening Shade. If you type in Evening Shade outtakes, and there's about 15-20 minutes of everybody just cracking up over lines and not being able. It's Cannonball Run all over again. It's terrific just to watch that. But that was award winning. There was lots of great stuff that he did there.
Because he got back into sort of like his main kind of like persona, if you like, without the action side of it, as in Striptease, didn't he, with Demi Moore?
Yeah. That was because it was a big movie as well. I mean, it wasn't like it was a small budget picture. He'd maybe done a few little bits and pieces, but to be given an opportunity like that and to go, do you know what? Yeah, I think this is all right, and to deliver a really decent role as well. He was. I think he might have been nominated for a role in that shape or form. Nominated for an award in that.
He even appeared in Bean.
Yeah, he did.
Rowan Atkinson.
That's right. He played. He was an army captain or an army major. He didn't care by that time. I'm sure.
He just wanted the money because he spent 13 million.
He did. He also did a couple of movies over here. He did a relatively small budget picture, playing an actor who's coming over here in rep. Jimmy O'D may have doubled him, in point of fact, on one of these pictures.
I'll have a chat with Jimmy about that.
Have a chat with Jimmy about that. Yeah. But yeah, there was those little bits and pieces, ultimately leading up to where he got himself absolutely right smack bang up top where he belongs, which was Boogie Nights. Yeah, which was an unbelievable.
He didn't enjoy it at all, did he?
He absolutely hated it. The whole concept, the premise. Everything about it was completely devoid for him. He couldn't understand it at all, and it went against everything that he was with his nature. And
it fitted his personality perfectly, didn't it?
Brilliantly, and that's how good an actor he was. That he could take something that he categorically hated, and said, "Look, I really don't think this is for me." Yeah. And the young director, who said, "Yes, I want you to do this because you're the best man for the job." And what a performance! He delivered a really seriously good. Again, nominated. I'm trying to think. Did he? Who won that year? I can't think who won, but it wasn't him. But it was very, very good. A terrific performance. And you suddenly realised, yeah, he's got it. He's absolutely got it. And likewise now. With this movie that he was promoting just up to his death, which called Last Movie Star.
Yep.
Last Movie Star is, again, a really nice, cleverly written picture.
Yeah. It's quite ironic, really, isn't it?
It is.
An aging former movie star is forced to face the reality that his glory days are behind him.
It's him.
Yeah.
You know, it's him. And not only does he accept the whole idea of the picture, but delivers a really serious performance.
And it was a low-budget film.
Yeah. Not
complete low-budget film.
very low budget, independently produced.
Yeah.
But really, really good. I watched there's an extended trailer on YouTube, which you should see. It's terrific, and there's a little behind the scenes thing as well.
It's he says it's the most honest role he ever done.
Yep. And you can see that. You can see that everybody involved in this, the girl in it is very, very good as well. They're not big names. You know, he's the big man. He's the name. And everybody else around him is clearly going, oh my God, that's Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
And they're remembering to act. I must act. I must not look starstruck during all of this. And he does a great job. They all do a great job. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But yeah, so that was the picture that he was working up to. And a couple of film festivals I think it went to. But hopefully will be released at some point over here before too long.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've come full circle. What I wanted to do, I'm going to put one thing about acting and stunt work and, you know, getting it right. There's a little thing but I saw this clip and I thought this is very, very good. You should have a look at this, really. But it's from the movie 100 Rifles. And it is him jumping from a train and arriving on his mark in focus, which is terribly complicated at the best of times.
Especially with the cameras they were using then.
Yeah, precisely. Back then, you know, you need to... There's an awful lot more work to be able to get to the point where you don't go through the focus and become fuzzy. And this is him arriving at a certain point. So he's jumping from a train, not the roof of the train, admittedly, but from a train. And he's landing, he's rolling, and he's arriving in shot, which is very, very tricky to do. If you look at this sequence again, you'll see that he's leaving the train, rolling, and then landing, and then he's smack bang in the middle of focus, and then he moves out of shot. It's really, really clever, and he understands that from television, because they were working television. He tried to find out as much about the job as possible. So he found out about the camera guy, and found out about the focus guy, and found out where was in focus, where was out of focus, and what was needed, and that was back then, you know. So nowadays it's very different. I guess if you walk through focus on a shot, they can correct it in some shape or form, I would have thought. Maybe they can, who knows? But
not as
out of
easy as
focus
that.
is out of focus, right?
You still have the focus puller,
Yeah,
with the digital focus puller
Right.
machine. So it's still hard work, you know. But I did a thing the other week where I had to run below a build or outside a building where the tower of the building was getting blown up.
Right.
And previous to that, debris was landing in front of me, so I had to come up, let the debris land, come out the door, avoid the tower being blown up, and then run across the mark.
Uh-huh.
And it's not until you speak to the camera and go, sorry, where's the edge of frame? What lens have you got on?
Yeah, exactly.
Where am I in focus? Where am I out of focus? And basically making little marks. So
Right.
you're working with the camera guy to get the shot that they want of you doing what they need you to do.
Right.
It's incidental kit. It's
Yeah.
incidental stuff. Sorry, it's not important. It's not featured. It just makes more sense if you understand what the camera's seeing.
Sure.
And that's what he's doing. He's
That's
doing
what
the
he's
role,
doing. Yeah.
and he knows what the camera's going to be seeing. So he's got to make that mark at the right speed, at the right height, get up, perfect focus, carry on acting.
Yeah. I think so. I think that he's a slightly different version of Harold Lloyd in that respect. Lloyd would be doing, you know, diving from one, Buster Keaton, diving from this, rolling around there. They weren't too fussed about, you know, being in shot, because it was often long shots, but he's having to do that as the character and landing in shot. And it's a clever little sequence, and I think it's very interesting to watch him work at the best of times. But he gave us some good times. And it's a great shame to to know that he's no longer with us. So there we go. That's our little look at Burt, and God bless you, mate, wherever you are.
Yep.
Thanks for all the good times, and we'll look forward to catching all of your remaining
Thank
movies.
you for the fun that you gave us.
Quite right too.
You obviously enjoyed it yourself too, didn't you?
Absolutely.
But no, it's been we wanted to put that together, mate, and have it a meaningful episode rather than just let's.
Couldn't let it pass.
No,
I don't think you could let
it's
it
important.
pass.
It is important.
It's important to many people. It's important to us. So wanted to put a little something together, and hopefully you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yep. So please download, subscribe, share. If you got a review, put a review up for us. That'd be nice. And we're on social media. If you come and find us on there, any questions, get hold of us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.